All right, welcome. Today, we are diving deep into a massive topic for anyone working in the cloud, AWS security. We're going to go on a journey starting with the initial blueprint for a secure setup and taking it all the way to the battle plan you need when things go wrong. Okay, let's get right into it. So, picture this. Your application is live. It's up and running, people are using it, everything feels great, right? But I've got to ask you a serious question. Is it truly secure? Because, getting an app deployed is one thing. Making sure it's actually protected from threats, that is a completely different ballgame. And it all starts with one single foundational idea. And that idea is the shared responsibility model. The easiest way to think about it is this. AWS handles the security of the cloud. So that's the physical buildings, the servers, the networking, the core software for their services. But you're responsible for security in the cloud. That means your data, how you configure your applications, who has access, basically everything you put on their platform. Getting this right is absolute step one. So, if you're on the hook for security in the cloud, where in the world do you even begin? Well, you start with a blueprint, a solid plan that makes sure you're building on a secure foundation right from the very start. And that blueprint from AWS is called the Security Reference Architecture, or SRA for short. Now, this isn't just some random checklist they threw together. You should think of it as the official playbook, built from the real-world wins and losses of thousands of other companies. It shows you how to deploy all the different AWS security services so they actually work together as one cohesive system across your whole organization. The whole point of the SRA is to get you thinking holistically. It's not just about turning on a single service and calling it a day. No, it's about weaving together a complete security fabric that follows all the best practices, especially in a multi-account environment, which, let's be honest, is how pretty much every serious company runs on AWS. This is your master plan. Okay, so we've got our master plan. Now let's zoom in on what we're all trying to protect in the first place, our digital assets. And you know what's at the very top of that list every single time? It's our data. And the number one tool for protecting data is encryption. Now, for anyone studying for a certification exam, you need to listen up. You absolutely have to know the two states of data. There's data at rest, that's data just sitting in a database or an S3 bucket. And there's data in transit, which is data flying across the network. Both of them have to be encrypted. No exceptions. And sitting right at the center of all this encryption is a service called AWS Key Management Service, or KMS. This is where you create and manage the cryptographic keys that lock and unlock all your precious data. It's like the central command center for your entire encryption strategy. Now, having the keys to the kingdom is one thing, but guarding them is a whole other challenge, right? If your data is locked away, you need a really good security guard watching over that key. And in the cloud, that guard isn't a person, it's a principle. And that principle is called least privilege. This is a golden rule in security. Seriously, all it means is that any user or any service should only have the bare minimum permissions it needs to do its job and nothing more. This is so important because it dramatically shrinks the blast radius if something ever goes wrong, like if credentials get stolen. So how does AWS actually enforce this for something as critical as a KMS key? It all boils down to a super strict evaluation process. When a request to use a key comes in, AWS looks at all the policies that might apply. And here is the golden rule you have to remember. An explicit deny always wins. It doesn't matter if there are a dozen allow permissions, just one denial will shut it all down. Access is only given if there's a clear allow and absolutely no deny anywhere. And the stakes here are just incredibly high. As this quote right from the AWS doc says, the policy that controls your key is just as sensitive as the key itself. If a bad actor can edit that policy, they can just give themselves permission to use your key and decrypt your data. That's why protecting your policies is just as important as protecting your data. Okay, so we've designed our fortress, we've protected our assets, but let's be real, no defense is perfect. So what happens when that alarm bell finally rings? We have to switch gears from proactive defense to a reactive battle plan. We need an incident response playbook. This is that moment that nobody wants, but everybody has to be ready for. A security incident has been detected. The clock is officially ticking, and the only way you're going to get through it effectively is with a calm, structured, well-rehearsed response. And responding in the cloud is a totally different beast. In the old on-prem world, you might physically unplug a server and take it to a lab for forensics. You can't do that in AWS. As this quote points out, everything happens over the network, through API calls. Your main source of truth, your evidence, is going to be your logs, especially AWS CloudTrail, which records every single API call made in your account. To handle that chaos, we follow this very structured 5-phase process. And if you're studying for an exam, you need to tattoo this on your brain. You will see these 5 phases again. It's detection, analysis, containment, eradication, and finally, recovery. Know them cold. And this really brings us to the biggest point of all. Security isn't a project with a start and an end date. It's a living, breathing cycle. You're constantly preparing, protecting, and responding. So let's just tie it all together into what we can call the security life cycle. First, you architect your environment using the SRA as your guide. Then you protect your data with things like KMS and the principle of least privilege. You prepare to respond with a practiced incident plan. And this is the most important part. You constantly improve by learning from incidents and running drills. So how do you improve? You practice. You run simulations. A great way to do this is with something called a purple team exercise, where your attack team, the red team, and your defense team, the blue team, work together. It's one of the absolute best ways to find the weak spots in your process before a real attacker does. And that's the final critical question I want to leave you with. Building your fortress is only half the job. The other half is constantly, relentlessly testing its walls. So, once your defenses are built, how are you going to test them? Wow, we just covered the entire life cycle, from the blueprint all the way to the battle plan. And these are exactly the kinds of concepts that make the difference between passing and failing a certification exam. So are you feeling ready to put that new knowledge to the test? Let's try out a real exam-style question.
Okay, here's a classic one. You've got an IAM user with a policy that says allow KMS encrypt. But the KMS key policy itself, it's totally silent. It doesn't mention the user's account at all. So can they encrypt the data? The answer is a hard no. Remember that evaluation logic we talked about? The key policy is the ultimate boss. It has to first grant permission to the account before any IAM policy inside that account can even matter. That's a critical detail you have to master.
See, it's understanding these little nuances, like the relationship between a key policy and an IAM policy, that really separates the people who pass from the people who fail. Nailing these core concepts is how you're going to walk into that exam room with competence and walk out with your certification. And hey, if you want to dive deeper and really hammer these concepts home with more questions just like that one, I can't recommend cloudcertificationstore.com enough. They've got a ton of amazing resources, from free study guides to super affordable practice exams written by experts. It's a fantastic one-stop shop to get you ready for success. Go check them out. Thanks so much for joining me today.